So the histology of the blood vessels is very interesting because the blood vessels are actually organs because they consist of more than one type of tissue. They actually also have their own nervous supply, and they actually also have their own blood supply. So the blood vessels are not getting oxygen and nutrients directly from the blood that they're transporting, but they actually have to get it through blood vessels that serve the actual blood vessel, okay? So this is kind of interesting. So we can talk about the layers of the blood vessels. And so when we talk about the layers, we can talk about the lumen, and this is the space through which blood flows. So right next to this blood flow, we have a layer of epithelial tissue, and this is called the tunica intima. So this is the one that is next to the lumen. And the tunica intima is epithelial tissue. It's endothelium. We actually talked about the endothelium of the heart. This is the same tissue. Or it is a type of epithelial tissue. And it's very important that this epithelial tissue stays smooth, because we talked about what happens when when the blood vessel is damaged and collagen fibers are exposed to the blood, we then get the adherence of platelets in the blood adhering to that site, and then we can get the formation of clots, which would be very bad, okay? So let's look at this tunica intima in my, oops, the wrong cardiovascular one. Okay, so if I look at this, I'll notice that it is a single layer of flat cells. And so we know from our histology of epithelial tissue that that is simple squamous epithelial tissue. I can actually see the nucleus of these cells. So that is my tunica intima as part of that. We also have, as part of this, we have a internal layer and then a layer of elastic fibers and smooth muscle. So that is my tunica media. So media, just remember muscle. So this is where the muscles and the elastic fibers reside right there. So the second layer is the tunica media. So this is smooth muscle and elastic fibers. You'll notice that the elastic fibers are actually only observed in the artery. They are not shown in the vein, and they're definitely not in your capillaries. So the reason for those elastic arteries is that when the ventricles contract, they force blood out at a high pressure, and it actually causes the blood vessel to expand. If it didn't, if your blood vessels harden, then it could actually rupture, and that would be a bad thing. So the reason for those elastic fibers in the arteries is that the blood is under high pressure, and the blood vessel needs to expand and then kind of recoil, hence the term of elasticity. So that is why, for example, I mentioned before that you can feel the pulse in your arteries, but not in your veins because of that expansion and recoil. You'll also notice here that on the outer part, we have the tunica externa, which is connective tissue and contains collagen fibers. So the tunica externa is connective tissue with collagen fibers. So that those collagen fibers provide the structural support You'll also notice that there's yellow structures here. That's your nervous system. So the nervous system innervates your blood vessels and can either cause the blood vessels to constrict or to dilate. And so you can see that on both the arteries and the veins. You can also see that there are blood vessels that are supplying oxygen and nutrients to, say, for example, the smooth muscle, which allows it to contract. You can also see that the smooth muscle layer on the veins is much, much thinner than the smooth muscle layer on the arteries. And specifically, when we talk about the elastic or the muscular arteries, the muscular arteries, they're going to have a lot more muscle around them because they typically have to shunt blood to different parts of the body depending upon what your physiology needs. And so you need to know these three layers, the tunica intima, the tunica media, and the tunica externa, and then the differences between the arteries and the veins.